What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the 8th episode of our F750 CrewCab build series. In the previous episode, you saw us bring our cab back into place and mock up the front clip of this truck, which means in today's episode, we're going to gut the interior of this thing. After that, we're going to try to figure out how to bring all the modern amenities of a Super Duty and put it into a dense side CrewCab. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Stay tuned. All right, you guys, first up for today is we're just gonna start gutting this thing, right? I already got all of the door panels off, all the interior components for, oh, I lied. All of them except for the one seized door that Kyle just opened. Attaboy, Kyle. You opened it. So I already got all the internal components for the window, the interior channels for that, all the door lock and hinges mechanisms, all that is off. All these doors are pretty clean. And so next up is we're just going to kind of take it one bite at a time, clearing this all out. And we have to figure out how we're going to place and where we're going to place like our AC, all of our HVAC, things like that. And but first thing we got to do is obviously gut this thing, bring it down. We have a lot of parts coming for this. All the interior rubber, all the seals, everything for the windows, the doors, new carpet. So what we're gonna do first is we're actually gonna take these seats out because I gotta send these out to an upholsterer and start getting them upholstered. So that's what we're doing first. And after that, we're gonna keep chugging along. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Sorry if I'm echoing because it sounds like I am, but let's get on it. Alright, you guys, update time. We got the front bench seat out. We got all that crappy vinyl, not carpet, crap out. We're getting all the trim out, things like that. All of the not so mint rubber around everything. Next up is we're gonna start taking out the doors. We actually already took out that door. We're gonna start unbolting all the doors, get them out of here. That's just gonna give us more room and it'll allow us to kind of break down the other two doors a little bit easier, getting all the door components out of there, things like that. And we're gonna have to adjust the doors anyways, so might as well take them off and get them out of here and have the extra room because this is up next. Pop out, and besides that, we'll have the interior almost gutted, and then we can start focusing on the dash. So there's nothing to it but to do it. All right, you guys, update time. Update time. So we're still gutting it. We got the seats out. So we actually ended up taking out this door just for the sake of helping us get out the seat. This door is also super sticky. It constantly was jammed, so we're gonna have to do a little R&D, right, Kyle, to figure out why it was so. Just D. We're gonna have to do a little research and development to figure out why it was sticking so bad, this specific one. I want to apologize. I haven't really been doing updates just because we've just been kind of going to town and everything. So we got the seats out. We still got to get a couple of the seat belts out. I got the headliner out. Everything we are going to be keeping is over here in this pile. We got the sun visors out. This is all the trim that goes around there. You can kind of see the outline of it right there. We are getting a new headliner, so we just tossed the old one out. And so next up is we are working on the dash. So obviously this is the gauge cluster right here. I'm actually going to take this home and start cleaning it up, repaint it, and make it look brand new again. We are going to be running new gauges. I'll have a little bit more information on that in the next coming episodes, just because I have to do a little bit of research to figure out essentially how we use the factory dash, but with 2016 Super Duty controls. So we think we have it figured out. So everyone that told us that we have to essentially do a dash swap, we don't believe we actually have to. So I took out the cluster, and I've been getting this wretched dash pad out of here. No offense to second gen fans, but this literally looks almost as bad as a second gen Cummins dash pad. So we won't be getting a new one. I and Kyle, we both talked about this, how we like the factory look. It looks really sleek, it looks really clean. Obviously it's dirty right now, but it's got some nice paint. This has probably been on it its whole entire life, because this dash is no dents, no dings, no scratches. Like, it is perfect paint. So we're gonna run, actually you can tell us right now in the comments, do you guys like dash pad, or do you guys like no dash pad, just the metal? It's actually kind of cool. It's almost half and half. I'll give you guys a little hint. We're gonna go with this way. I like how sleek and minimalistic it looks. But so up next is I got to get the rest of the bolts out from up underneath it to get all of this out. I just kind of broke this off, so now you need to come up underneath. There's in every single one of these grooves, there's a bolt and a nut. So if you're taking off one of these on your personal rig, that's how you do it. Just comes up underneath here, and yeah, there's nothing to it but to do it. Start taking out some more stuff, and you guys will see shortly. All right, you guys, update time. So I got the dash pad off. It was actually a lot harder than I was anticipating. The top came off relatively easy. However, there was a thin little piece that went across that kind of gave me a hassle. Anyways, there's essentially 8 grooves. Anywhere that's cut out, that's where a bolt went through from the pad. So you're gonna have 8 of those. And then this thin little strip, it's bent, but that's how the front was bolted in place. And there's 6 of them along the face of the dash. And those were a little bit tricky because they're at a weird angle facing back. So I had to get a swivel for my electric ratchet. It made life a lot easier because I could get in there and get back to it. So next up, what I'm gonna do, there we go, I'll slow down so I can talk, is I'm going to take out the radio. This is old, this is not working, so we're gonna get rid of it. We're gonna get a new one, obviously. And then I'm gonna clear this of anything we don't need and anything that's gonna be kind of in the way to swap in our AC unit from the donor truck. So I'm going to remove the jockey box door. This locking mechanism is a little sticky, it doesn't close. So essentially I'm gonna tear it apart, clean it up, and hopefully that fixes it. If not, we're gonna have to get a new one. But essentially I'm gonna take apart and remove anything we don't need, just the way it's not in our way. There's the odometer reading. I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know if it's rolled over. It says 22,806. I don't know. I don't know if that's the real odometer reading or not, but essentially I'm gonna tear off everything and we'll go from there. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's get rid of this old radio. Alright you guys, I just popped out the radio. It was a lot harder than I expected. I didn't know that the knobs, you pull off the knobs and that's where the nuts and bolts are. So essentially you have 2 knobs right here, you pull them off and you can access everything through there. So that took a lot longer than expected, kind of embarrassing, but next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up everything. This is all trash, this is stuff we're not using, and then I'm going to jump underneath the dash and pull out fuses and everything else up underneath it. This is where our AC is going to go, so this has to be completely clean, and essentially we're not going to really be using anything from this original dash in terms of wiring and things like that. We'll keep it just in case. But for the most part, everything gets pulled out and we'll put it to the side to save for a later day just in case we need it. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's start tearing shit out. Alright you guys, I got the last of the wiring out behind the dash, bezel to be exact, and because obviously everything's in the dash, but I got as much of the air components out as I possibly could. I got all the random like horn, things like that out of the way. I am keeping some of the stuff here just because I don't know exactly what we will be using and what we won't be using. So Right here is for the windshield wipers. Now I did cut off the wiring, but I left enough of it that we can splice it if need be, or we might be getting rid of the whole entire motor itself. Probably most likely going to keep it just because it'll be easy to wire up this to the donor truck harness compared to getting the motor from the donor truck to fit into here stock or nicely. So we're probably going to keep this, but I wanted to keep the wiring. I also did keep some of the other stuff, like there's some wiring down there that's for the cab lights. And so I kept that just so we can splice into that because the donor truck doesn't have cab lights. That's pretty much it. Everything else is out of the way. It's a mess in here, so I got to start cleaning everything up. I need to organize what we're keeping, what we're not. Obviously all the trim pieces like this, trim for the cab or the headliner, keeping obviously, this from the donor truck. But essentially I just need to clean this completely out, figure out what we're keeping, what we're getting rid of. Up next, what I do need to do is I need to run to the donor truck for a couple reasons. Reason number one was we figured out that this is actually a passenger side hinge, and that is why our door isn't closing properly, and it's because that hinge is actually backwards. So I need to go grab one from the donor truck, as well as I need to get a parts list of everything we do and don't have for this interior, and I'm going to make a list that coincides with the list from the donor truck, so I can hopefully between the two I can have a complete truck. Now obviously the donor truck is just a two-door, so I'm not going to have anything for the rear. However, besides the trim and things like that, I only need one door panel, which is the passenger side over there. Besides that, we have all the trim, we have everything, obviously new rubber, but I can buy that online. So hopefully, and my goal is between the two trucks, we have one complete interior. I want to do that before I start buying parts, just because there's no point in buying excess parts, and maybe we'll save a little money that way. So next up, I'm going to run to the donor truck, start making a list for that. So there's nothing to it but to do it. All right, you guys, we just got back from the donor truck. Now that this is empty, I'm probably going to echo really bad, so I'm sorry for that. But up next is we are going to remove the steering wheel, the steering column, get rid of the pedals, and start working on bringing the steering column, steering wheel, and pedals and HVAC system from the 2016 Super Duty. After that, we're going to potentially work on the brake booster as well as the computer system, getting that mounted and where we want to put it for all the wiring. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's get out with the old. All right, you guys, update time. We got the whole entire firewall clean as far as we need it to start mocking up our HVAC system and our AC over there from the donor truck. We got rid of the pedals. We got rid of all the excess air components for the brake system that we don't need anymore out of the way. Kyle's been cleaning up because this is pretty dang dirty. So we're going to keep cleaning up all this and get rid of all the little knick-knacky components that we're going to use, but we don't need on the dash for right now. We kind of want a completely clean slate, so that way when we bring in the wiring harness from the donor truck, there's nothing in our way. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's start cleaning, and we'll go from there. All right, you guys, update time. Kyle just finished cleaning the front of the cab. We did run into a couple pinhole rust spots. Couple here, couple there. Our big concern right here, though, is there is some around the cab mount. So we need to get that fixed primarily. Obviously, we're going to fix everything just because it's exposed and might as well. There's a couple more right here, and then there's a few spots over there. Besides that, there's nothing else, which is kind of surprising, but we'll take it. So
and they're gonna ask. They're gonna be like, "Oh, you have to replace the whole pan, the whole thing." This is actually, there's actually a lot of meat here. So these holes only got deep in like certain sections, so you can see where how it dips down and it thins out there. The sheet metal is only so thin, but you can see where it dips down and made the hole. It was that specific area. Yeah, there's these other pockets and stuff, but realistically, you gotta look at it. If this was your car, I mean, maybe if you're someone would get to spend thousands of dollars to replace just everything and make everything brand new. Yeah, you'd cut this whole thing out and weld it in. But whereas you just need it functional, this project truck is more of functionality and then looks second. So functionality wise, we just got to make sure the motor mount gets fixed. We'll weld up and repair anything up here so that it's going to be watertight. And then we're going to do whatever we can to keep it from rusting out again. But if it does, then we do it again. But
yep, pretty much. So
see,
yes.
A lot of metal there still. It's not like it's falling out.
Yeah, which is your primary concern with rust. If you can kind of stick a screwdriver through it, you're kind of screwed and need to replace everything. Whereas that, he's bashing a hammer up against it and we're good to go. So I'm going to keep pulling out the dash in the donor truck. And Kyle, what are you going to do?
I don't know yet.
He doesn't know. He's going to grab a beer. So there's nothing to it but to do it. I guess we'll keep cleaning. All right, you guys, new day here. We have plenty of light to work with. Kyle was getting going on filling our rust issues in the floor of the cab. Essentially, we're filling it right now. We're obviously going to grind this down, but we're filling them up, going to grind them down, and hopefully that works. We still have a lot of really good material, and Kyle felt confident with just kind of filling the pinholes that we had, grinding it down. We are going to have Pour 15 that we'll be able to spread out all over this. And then we do have a sound deadening material that we're also putting on this before the carpet. So we want to finish all of this out. We want to make it as sturdy and strong as possible. Obviously, the motor mount was the most imperative part because obviously that's what attached it to the chassis. So Kyle's been going to town on this, doing a great job. He's almost done. He's got some grinding and just whatever else filling he has. And I'll give you guys an update when he's done with that and when he starts jumping on the other side. All right, you guys, so we got this in the shop. I am going to clean it up really quickly. There is a lot of grass clippings and things like that from the previous owner. It was owned by a landscaping company, so I'm going to clean this up. Now, I'm not gonna wash it or anything like that, but there's a lot of dirt, residue, and grass clippings that I would rather have off of this before we install it and start mocking it up. So I'm gonna do that really quickly. And after that, we're going to get some measurements, just start putting it inside the truck, and hopefully things line up a little bit in our favor to make this go by quickly. And hopefully by the end of the day, we have a 1976 F750 CrewCab with AC and heat. So fingers crossed, whoop, thumbs up, whatever. There's nothing to it but to do it. Let's get cleaning. All right, you guys, update time. We ran into somewhat of an issue. This AC unit, heater core, everything like that is much wider because the dash in the 16 is a lot bigger than this dash and this firewall setup. So what we are going to do is we are actually going to remove the full dash, get it out of here, and replace the firewall in this truck with the 16 firewall. And that'll do a number of things. One thing it'll do is it'll get us the natural contour of the firewall that will match up with this perfectly. We'll be able to bolt it right back in, perfectly in place, things like that. And that'll also do another thing, which will eat up some of our space in the engine bay. In the 2016, it comes out a lot more from here at this point over and out. And that will give us the adequate amount of space for this AC and heating system to be pushed back and up into the dash. Another thing that'll do for us is, Kyle brought this up, the firewall. Sorry guys, my battery died. Anyways, Kyle brought up a good point. With the firewall that we switch over from the donor truck into here, we'll be able to use all of the factory holes, bolt hole locations, everything for when we swap over things like the gas pedal, the brake pedal, emergency brake, the brake booster. Literally the list goes on and on and on. So the swap is actually not that bad of a deal. It is in retrospect to getting this project done because it's going to put us back a couple weeks and things like that. But I think overall it's probably a better choice for us just because it will give us the space and the ability to have AC and heater in here. It's going to make our life a lot easier because we won't have to manufacture and mock up brackets for everything that we swap over from the donor truck into here. And then lastly, I want to point out is I discovered this the other day. I don't know if I'll be able to show it. Let's see. Right there, along this whole entire firewall, there is some water damage. There's the beginning of rust. Obviously, it hasn't rusted through. I assume that is from this bad boy right here. Obviously, water comes in and it diverts it. That's what I assume how the water damage started. So it'll actually be kind of nice to cut that out. We can pretty much seal it back up with all the seam sealer because we have to seam seal all the stuff that we took off, and we can really make sure that any water that does get in there, it doesn't affect our firewall or any welds or new metal kind of going forward from here. So that's where we're at right now. We need to take out this dashboard, and essentially once we pull that out, we can assess, take measurements, figure out exactly where we're going to cut our firewall out, and we can go from there. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's take this bad boy out and keep chugging along. All right, you guys, update time. In order for us to take out the dash, there are just a couple bolts up underneath it, but the big thing that holds it in place is all of these spot welds where the windshield is. So we had to take out the windshield, and when we did that, we also discovered there is some major rust issues along that, which it hasn't progressed into the ceiling or the roof or anything like that, so or down these pillars, so that is kind of a silver lining. So we will be cutting these out. We'll probably just cut it out here on each side, get rid of it with either angle iron or the donor truck, get a piece back in it, re-weld it back into place, and that'll be taken care of. So up next is Kyle's going to cut the dash out. I'm going to go out to the donor truck, and I am going to get everything that we don't need in the dash area out of there, put it in the back seat, so that way everything is completely clean, completely ready for us to cut the firewall out. So there's nothing to it but to do it. Let's start cutting away. right, you guys, update time. Kyle knocked this out of the park. The whole entire dash has been cut out. We have a completely bare, besides the tools and the shop vac and light that we are using, a completely bare cab, which is kind of crazy to think about, kind of where we started. But yeah, here it is. We probably should have done a new firewall regardless if we were going to use the donor trucks or not. And the reason being for that is we have all the factory holes from the F750, all the factory holes from 1976. Well, when we start puncturing this firewall for the new components, new pedals, AC, all the wiring harnesses, everything like that, when we start puncturing holes for those things in this firewall, you're going to lose so much integrity because it'll be essentially Swiss cheese. This thing has so many holes in it already, all the way through, which obviously it was sufficient enough for the truck before we did the swap. But when we do all new holes for what we need done, there's just going to be holes everywhere. So regardless if we are going to use the donor truck's factory firewall or not, this kind of needs to be redone no matter what. So we probably should have done this firsthand. We are ignorant. This is our first time doing something like this. So, you know, at the end of the day, you live and you learn, right? So that's pretty much it for today. There's nothing more else we can do besides tackling the monster of cutting out both firewalls. We still need to clean out the donor truck a little bit more to be able to cut that firewall out, take measurements. And so, but for now, the inside of this cab, we're going to clean it out a little bit, but this is essentially 100% gutted. Everything is out of here. We are now officially ready to kind of move forward with the firewall, get everything mocked up in terms of AC and heat, and God, what a project this is. But it'll work out in the end. It'll be awesome. It'll be super cool, one of a kind. So that's all we have. All right, you guys, that's going to be a wrap for today's episode. We got the entire interior of this truck gutted. It's unfortunately we didn't get the AC system installed or at least mocked up, but that's the name of the game. Sometimes things go as planned, sometimes it doesn't. So the next episode, we're going to cut out the firewall of both trucks, get the new one from the donor truck into the 76, and graft the two together. So keep an eye out for that video, and we'll see you on the next one.